the idea behind Blobscriptions was, irrespective of the fact that this was designed for L2s that are often run by multi-billion-dollar companies, maybe normal people should also be able to use this technology, especially when the barrier is not the protocol, which, as I mentioned, is permissionless. The barrier is not cost, which I mentioned these are cheap ways of storing data. The barrier is basically it's too hard to use.
Hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday. I'm Andre Bagansky, the head writer at Coinage. Joined with me today for a conversation on all things Ethscriptions is Tom Lehman, co-founder of Facet and the former CEO of Genius. How are you doing today, Tom? Nice to have you on the show.
I'm great. Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, so in the news recently, we had this Ethereum upgrade that made it cheaper to transact on L2s, but very quickly, Blobscriptions has come around and sort of gummed up that infrastructure the upgrade created, per se. I'd love to start off with just a challenge, a little bit of a challenge. Can you describe what's going on with Blobscriptions in 10 words or less?
Oof. Normal people empowered to use new Ethereum functionality. How many words is that?
It sounds like it was under 10, so that's a good way to start off. But when you really unpack that, Blobscriptions being sort of this new ephemeral type of data structure that people can post transactions to and therefore like make rollups cheaper. Can you, just taking a step back, talk about Ethscriptions and how Blobscriptions was the next sort of natural phase of this project that you've created?
Sure. So Ethscriptions is a project that began last June, and it was a project inspired by Bitcoin and their inscriptions and ordinals. And so Ethscriptions is a portmanteau of Ethereum and inscription, Ethscriptions. And the idea behind inscriptions on Bitcoin was basically, how can we have NFTs? How can we have fungible tokens? How can we have some of this extra functionality on Bitcoin that is not possible under the Bitcoin protocol? Like the Bitcoin protocol is very simple. And so if you want extra functionality, you have to be clever, and these were clever techniques. Now, the Ethereum protocol is pretty robust. You can run any piece of code on it. You can do any logic. You can create NFTs. You can create ERC20 tokens, fungible tokens, and you do this through smart contracts. And smart contracts are incredibly flexible. And so what sense does it possibly make to do inscriptions on Ethereum? Inscriptions were designed for a protocol that didn't have smart contracts. Why do you want to use them on Ethereum? But the idea behind inscriptions was basically smart contracts are not so good, basically, in the end. Smart contracts are great functionality-wise, but they are so expensive that they are not usable by normal people to do normal things. So if you've ever used Ethereum, you've come to realize this. If you want to swap between two fungible tokens on an app like Uniswap, that could cost $20, $30, $40, $50, $100. It could cost $100. If you want to trade an NFT, it could cost that same amount. Minting an NFT. Everything you want to do is super expensive on Ethereum, except sending Ether, the native cryptocurrency. That's pretty cheap. Still expensive, more so than you'd want it to be, but that's $2 or $3. And that's not so bad. It's not as bad as $50. So Ethscriptions was a way of allowing people to do other things on Ethereum that they want to do besides send Ether, and yet pay a very small transaction cost and a transaction fee that was about the same as sending Ether. And so it started with NFTs and then expanded to other things.
Yes, and so Blobscriptions coming on last week, last Wednesday, we saw that the base fee for blobs had gone up to $266. It currently stands at $29. And in terms of how that translates to just like costs like sending Ethereum, like right now it's around 3 cents on Optimism and Arbitrum to send ETH. And on mainnet, it's $2.34. So definitely some significant cost savings on that front. But there's sort of this idea out there that Blobscriptions, because of sort of like flooding the market for blobs, is kind of like creating a stress test on the network. In what ways is it sort of pushing or testing the sort of viability of this Ethereum upgrade, in your opinion?
Sure. So what are blobs? So blobs are a brand new thing which is really cool, like for Ethereum to be so mature and add a brand new thing. So I got to give a shout out to everyone who worked on this. And it's great technology. It's a new way of posting data to Ethereum that's really cheap. And what makes it really cheap is that there's two factors. One is that it doesn't interact with smart contracts or anything that's related to smart contracts. And as I just mentioned, smart contracts are really expensive. And the other thing that makes it cheap is that the Ethereum protocol does not require Ethereum nodes to keep it around more than 18 days. So this leads to a very cheap way of posting data. And this was designed with so-called layer 2 scaling solutions, L2s, in mind. But anyone can use these things, which is the beauty of the Ethereum protocol. It's a permissionless protocol. You don't have to call up Vitalik and say, hey, Vitalik, is this okay? Can I get your permission first? You don't have to call the CEO of Coinbase. You don't have to call any powerful person. You just get to use the protocol just like anyone else. And the idea behind Blobscriptions was, irrespective of the fact that this was designed for L2s that are often run by multi-billion-dollar companies, maybe normal people should also be able to use this technology, especially when the barrier is not the protocol, which, as I mentioned, is permissionless. The barrier is not cost, which I mentioned these are cheap ways of storing data. The barrier is basically it's too hard to use. It is confusing to create a way of using these things that other people can join you in, where you can say something using a blob and other people can read that and respond or whatever they want to do. So Blobscriptions is a protocol that makes it easy for anyone to use these things. And what we saw is that the price of blobs before the protocol was artificially low because people were artificially excluded from playing the blob game. Basically, there are people who wanted to pay the price but couldn't pay the price because it was not accessible to them, because there was no easy way to do it. It was just too complicated and hard. And so what you see when you make things easier is you see the price go closer to the the market level. And so right now, the blob price has gone up, but that has reflected the actual demand by actual people, not the artificially low price you saw when this technology was kind of not so in the reach of a normal person. So I would say it's stress testing the functionality for sure. I would also just say it's the functionality being used to the fullest extent. If you look at blob usage, we are now at the target, which is 3 blobs per block. Before we were below the target, and so it's cool that this technology has enabled the upgrade to get the amount of usage that it deserves.
It is definitely getting usage, that is for sure. We've got a visual that we're going to show, which is sort of blobs posted over the past 5 days, because, it's pretty drastic, that purple there being represented by inscriptions, just the amount of blobs, pure blobs. It really looks like inscriptions is being dominant in this sense. And when you think about the upgrade, I don't think anybody was talking about Dan Kuhn and saying, wow, we're going to have inscriptions in the blob space. That's really exciting. Talk to me about either like the cheerleading maybe that you're seeing on one side and maybe the pushback on the other when it comes to what you're doing, potentially definitely using blob space in an unintended way.
It's fascinating because, as I mentioned, the beauty of permissionless protocols is that you don't know how people are going to use them. You don't know how people are going to find value in them. And the reason for that is you don't force them to do what you want. And there's this idea that if you don't force people to do what you want, maybe they will come up with ideas that are better than yours. And so when you see people doing something, it's often good to try to learn, why they're doing that and what we can learn from that versus saying, dang it, I wish we had made this less permissionless or whatever people are thinking. From my perspective, the key question here is, what is an inscription? Right? I would just ask people that question. What is an inscription? Because blobs are new. So, there's no history with them. Blobs are also blobs. They have no structure to them. They have no hook into any other part of the profile of the protocol. You can't be compatible with a smart contract or not. There's no hook into anything. It's a standalone blob that can be anything. So what makes a normal person posting a blob an inscription, whereas layer 2 that's run by a multi-billion-dollar corporation posting a blob normal, right? What is the actual difference?
Well,
there.
Tom, I think when you talk about the difference of, let's say, inscriptions versus NFTs, I think when it comes to Bitcoin, at least, a lot of people make the argument that, well, inscriptions are inscriptions because they sort of live permanently on Bitcoin's blockchain. Like when you think of inscribing, I often think of like, carving something into it and this idea of like a permanency. And as you mentioned, you said that, blobs only stick around for 18 days. We've actually got a meme that we wanted to show, which you posted in reference to that, sort of that you know I distribution chart, I guess, for lack of a better term. And when we think about the idea of blobs being ephemeral, can you just help us wrap our brain around how this actually works? Like this idea that you're inscribing data on something, it does disappear. There's mentions of indexers in this meme for people who can't read that text right there, but sort of saying that there's technical solutions out there that can sort of keep a record of what goes on in blobs.
Right. So blobs are only around for 18 days, according to the Ethereum protocol. And how bad, is that? And what, I don't agree with Vitalik on many things, to be honest, but I do agree with that meme that he posted, which is it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal because A, the method to verify a blob's authenticity is around forever, is on the blockchain forever. So if someone gives you the data and says, this is the blob, you don't have to trust them. You can check. Okay, you can authenticate it. So as long as one person has the data and you can get at it, you're fine. And a ton of people are going to have this data, whether it is websites like Blobscan, which are dedicated to storing all this stuff, whether it's peer-to-peer, data storage solutions, IPFS, whether it's services like Alchemy or QuickNode. There are going to be a lot of people interested in storing historical, Ethereum data, and it's going to be fine. And you can also just store it yourself, and maybe not personally, but for example, Inscriptions indexers all store it for you anyway. So on planet Earth, we don't go around saying, oh my God, my file's lost just because an Ethereum node can't give it to me. On planet Earth, the question is, can you get it on planet Earth? Like, what would you actually do to get it? And can you authenticate it once you have it? So if you want to use Ethereum as a database, then this is not a good choice for you because you are not going to get it from Ethereum. But if you want to use Ethereum to have a protocol, if you want to use Ethereum as a way of posting data in order to timestamp it, in order to verify the order in which it was posted relative to other people, and in order to make it available for other people to store for however long, you should use this. The blockchain is not that good at being a database, right? Like this is something that distinguishes me from other thinkers on inscriptions and also my previous self, basically, because I used to not think this. The blockchain is not that good at being a database. Because other things can be a decentralized database. What the blockchain is uniquely suited for is putting things in order and not having downtime. And so if you are trying to do something that has the requirement of strict ordering, where you know who came first, and you're trying to say there's no downtime ever for this process, then that's a great use for the blockchain. If you're trying to store data forever, there are other options that can also do it. Maybe the blockchain's better, but it's not better enough to say I'm never going to use any of these cool features that allow me to deal with the ordering and the no downtime question in a good way.
I think when you look at sort of the experimentation with this, there's something that comes out to me where it's almost like this idea of like testing to see if things can break in crypto or just in developers and like the world of development in general. And like, would you say that you're doing this for like philosophical reasons, or would you say that it's fun? Would you say it's an experiment? Because I think there's probably some people that could look at there and say, well, what is this doing in terms of addressing a need in crypto?
Right. So part of it is fun in the sense that, as I mentioned, like I disagree with a lot of the politics behind blobs and L2s or whatever, but like technology-wise, you don't see this that often. A new thing, as I mentioned, on an old blockchain. Really fun to play around with it and come up with a way to use it. That's cool. But the deeper question here to me, and this relates to everyone being mad about this, is everyone was planning on using blobs anyway. Right? Blobs are supposed to be used by everyone, except the intended use was that your blob use was supposed to be mediated by an L2. So if you want to write to a blob, the idea behind the official establishment is you can't write to that blob without an L2's permission. So if you go on Base, as an example, and do a transaction, that will be eventually put into a blob. That's fine. It's not fine when you do it yourself. right? This is the political situation we're
Hmm.
in right now. And to me, that's funny because, you know, if you are using an L2 run by a multi-billion-dollar corporation, they can shut that L2 down and kill your ability to use blobs. But if you're using blobs on your own, then that's permissionless. No one can shut that down. So the betterment, the betterment of the world idea here is giving people the ability to use blobs without the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation being able to shut them down and prevent them from using blobs. To use blobs in a permissionless way, whereas the establishment, who presumably came to Ethereum with somewhat of a skeptical attitude towards corporations, the establishment is now of the mindset that hey, it's only kosher to use blobs if there's a billion-dollar corporation involved, and that to me is a very weird, a very very weird thing. So that would be the political standpoint of blobs, is to try to give some amount of breathing room for life outside of corporate control in Ethereum's future for normal people.
You said billion-dollar corporation about like maybe 5 times there, and I think that like you're definitely like that point gets across in terms of like, if we are a permissionless ecosystem in crypto, like we should have democratized access to these Ethereum upgrades, and it shouldn't necessarily just benefit like one subset of projects. I also I would be curious to hear your thoughts on whether this is turning the heat up on those corporations, or whether it's potentially just like reducing overall activity in the space. Because we have a visual for fees that I wanted to end up showing you. Maybe I'm like reading this wrong. I would really love your sort of thoughts on this, but it sort of shows as inscriptions is taking up more, I'm seeing fees go down among these other L2s. Am I reading that wrong right there? Can you help me unpack this right here?
Well, there seems to be that big outlier day from Starknet. I wonder what happened there, and then Linnea go. It's tough to say from this. I don't think. I mean, look,
I know
there's
it's such a small
billion
data
dollar
set, and I
corporations are
think
super powerful, and when coupled with the support of the Ethereum establishment, are even more powerful. So I would not think. I don't think that the blobscription thing is going to prevent the march of L2 progress or whatever. I think it's a well, yeah, I don't think it's causing like major headaches for the CEO of Coinbase or whatever right now.
Very good point. Very good point. I'm just, sometimes it's hard to actually like quantify, in crypto, like, clearly this is having an effect, but at the same time, like just how much of an effect I think is, almost like a separate question on its own sometimes. I like, do you think blobscriptions, ETHscriptions are here to stay? I feel like once you sort of like open these tools up, like there's an endless sort of stream of experimentation and interest that goes on with these things. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts because, the reason why I ask this is because inscriptions, very popular on Bitcoin, spread to other chains. I'm thinking of Avalanche and I'm thinking of Polygon, and like sometimes like these chains struggle under the weight of those inscriptions. I'm just very curious about your thoughts, whether this is something that is here to stay moving forward.
Sure. So I mean, blobscriptions, ETHscriptions, these are protocols. These are abstract ideas. These are hallucinations in a sense. Like if you play by the rules of the protocol, then you can enjoy these benefits, but no one can force you to play by the rules, and no one can kill the rules because they're just rules. So in that sense, they are permanent. And also Ethereum, I believe it's going to last for a while, maybe not forever, ever, but I like Ethereum. I think it's going to last for a while. So the protocol's rules, which are abstract, and Ethereum is a long-lasting permissionless blockchain where you can apply those rules. So yes, I think they will last a really long time. Now, will people use them? This is the question. Right now we are witnessing, the blob upgrade 4844 is just one part of this. Right now we are witnessing a total transformation of Ethereum from the thing that you hear about when you're told about it, from what I used to tell normal people about it, normies about it, when I first got into it. When you read something on Wikipedia, like you see Ethereum, you see as this thing in your head where it's like, okay, it's that blockchain with the smart contracts, blah, blah, blah. Ethereum is being transformed into basically a blob dumping ground for, and I don't want to say the $1 billion thing, so it's trigger, you don't like it, but just like giant entities to dump their layer 2 data. And so I think people who are nervous about this might want to try to do something about it. And one thing you can do about it is use alternative solutions to scaling Ethereum, such as Facet and Ethscriptions and Blobscriptions, all part of the same family. Another thing you can do is work on these or start a competing one. It doesn't have to be the one that we started. It can be a competing one. But what you see instead is people cheering on the giant entities, I'll say, not billion-dollar corporations, the giant entities who are taking control over the way the blockchain is used. So this is not business as usual, right? The blockchain, Ethereum, is going to be radically transformed over the next 6 months, year, and so what is going to happen with the transformation? Who's going to get more power, and is there going to be still enough room for the original ethos of Ethereum? And I think that these technologies are very wrapped up in that question. I hope people choose maybe the less shiny thing, the little bit more expensive thing, the thing that's not approved by the establishment, but the thing that actually allows for greater freedom and less control. So I'm optimistic. I think people will to some extent choose that. I don't think L2s will. I like L2s. I don't think L2s will go away, but I am happy. I'm optimistic that there will be another alternative, and these technologies will be part of that.
Yeah, Tom, I didn't want to, I'm not against the term billion-dollar corporation. I think those sort of labels are important to establish. I just really wanted to highlight this idea that, anybody with a computer should have the same sort of power as an organization with a massive amount of resources, at least in your sort of philosophical view. When it comes to the sort of backers of Bitcoin and inscriptions, I definitely do see a mentality sometimes where this idea of Ethereum tripping over itself is something to be enjoyed. And I do have a meme that I wanted to show. It was only viewed a little bit, but I did like it. I thought it was a good one. Want to highlight it for you because I would love to sort of get your thoughts on this idea of inscriptions potentially being used in an unexpected way in order to sort of, make people sort of see the impact of blobscriptions, where, we've got a dude kick flipping a rake here only to end up hitting himself in the face. I mean, is this really accurate? Because, L2 fees are still dramatically lower, but at the same time, it's funny. It made me laugh. So help me explain this.
I like it. I think, there's a story, about like a nerd thing in the ancient Rome. There's this guy Diogenes the Cynic, and he's in the forum, I guess, and the other guy comes up and says he sees him eating lentils. He says, if you would just learn to flatter the king, you wouldn't have to eat lentils. And Diogenes says, but if you would just learn how to eat lentils, you wouldn't have to flatter the king. And I think that applies in this sort of situation. If you would just have a protocol, a network where you could prevent people from doing bad stuff, then and you could control people, then you wouldn't have to deal with anyone doing things you didn't like. But if you are down for some people to do things that you didn't anticipate or didn't like, you could have freedom. And so I think I find the rake thing funny because even some uses of blobscriptions I think personally are dumb, or like I'm not in support of every single thing that's been blobscribed or whatever. Like I just, worked on the protocol. So it's like, I'm supportive of the overall idea. So some of that stuff dumb, but I look at that and I think like, what is your proposal for how to run the world basically? Is it to only do stuff that, the smart people who know everything think are good? I don't know. I personally, feel like the ethos of Ethereum, it's like if you look at, it's like show all of this stuff, the whole thing we're doing here to a normal person and see what they say, see what people say about NFTs, see what people would say about meme coins, see what people say about all of this stuff. People think it's all stupid. Like, let me, spoiler alert. And so if you are trying to resist that and say, hey, like there's other stuff going on here, then why jump into that attitude with Blobscript? But I think it's a funny meme. I think it's a funny idea because it gets at, the contrast, I think, between just like, expectations and reality. I like the meme. I think it's funny. I got a good sense of humor.
I think it's safe to say Ethscriptions are probably not the dumbest thing we see in crypto, or will be the dumbest thing that we see in crypto, but it's fascinating because of that can of philosophical worms that it opens. So, any parting thoughts in terms of Ethscriptions, in terms of like where you would hope to see this thing go, or in terms of like what you want its ultimate sort of impact to be?
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I think Blobscriptions was something I felt like we had to do because blobs were new, and I wanted to open it up and see what people would do with it. But it's not like my major focus right now. It's too young. We're going to see. My major focus is this thing called Facet. You can check it out, facet.org. It's a pretty sparse website, but you can check out the links. And it is using the concept of Ethscriptions to create a general computation platform. So not just NFTs, not just token, not just any one particular use case, but rather to do anything, to be a full competitor to layer twos. And it does this in a way radically different from how layer twos work. It does this in a completely decentralized fashion. It is not a blockchain. It is a different way of using Ethereum. And its key insight is that you can do everything on Ethereum that you want to do without using smart contracts. So smart contracts are traditionally seen as the thing that makes Ethereum special. Our perspective is they are the thing that is holding Ethereum back. And so if you can abandon smart contracts, you can actually give up no functionality and have something that is a lot cheaper and completely decentralized. And so if you want to learn more about how we do that, check out, again, facet.org. You can click around the docs, etc. And we are really excited to keep building this. And I think it's the only truly decentralized scaling solution. And the reason it's the only one is because doesn't exist in the sense of being a separate network that someone controls, a separate blockchain. It is just a way of using Ethereum differently. So it's just a way of looking at Ethereum differently. It's not a new blockchain. It's a way of using an existing blockchain in a better way. And so we're really excited about that. And so if you think Blobscriptions are, weird or funny or a joke, like, I don't blame you. Like, we're new at this, and often jokes lead to great things. But if you want to see something that's more serious that I'm devoting my life to or whatever, that would be it. So please, in addition to judging my work on Blobscriptions, judge my work on Facet, which is my main focus right now. So check it out.
Well, there you go, everyone. Tom Lehman, thank you so much for joining the show. Hopefully I see you later at NFT NYC this week. I know you'll be in the conference area. And Ethereum NFTs, are they dead? Real quickly. Quick answer. Rapid fire.
Yes. I mean, Ethereum NFTs in traditional context where you have to use a Ethereum smart contracts, too expensive, dead. Facet has NFTs, which are also on the layer one and are going to be live. So I'm conflicted on this answer somewhat. But yeah, you can't do smart contracts. They're just insane. They're too expensive.
Well, there you go, everyone.
I love a lot of great NFTs, so I'm speaking against my book. Buy my NFTs, everyone.
We'll have to have you on the show soon. See you around at the Ethereum conference, and thanks again for taking time out of your day to talk about Blobscriptions. Fascinating topic. That's it for me, everyone. We'll see you on later on the week. We're going to have some interesting talks regarding tokenization and potentially some Do Kwon updates in the works. So I'm Andre Vagansky, and I'll see you later.